Hi, good afternoon. I hope you can see my entire screen. I can't see everything here. Oh, there we go. Thank you for joining and thank you for indulging me with my presentation in English. It would be terrible in German, I'm afraid. So I really appreciate your time this afternoon to join us. So today I'm going to talk about engagement in the always on era. We're going to talk about our research. We do an annual research. Some of you might have joined the webinar we did last year. And we, at Verint, we do an annual research. We like to see what's happening, particularly on the consumer side. This year we're also looking a little bit on the employee side and seeing how they're feeling about this technology in their lives, in their workplace. And the reason we do this is that we feel customer engagement is changing. So companies are really experiencing, finding that customer experience is at the top of their kind of KPIs. Boardrooms measure companies on it, and I think everyone knows that if you have a good customer experience, your customers tend to stay with you. They're happy, they're content, you drive more revenue, you're more profitable. So there's a clear reason, apart from just having happy customers, to try and drive that fantastic customer experience. On the other hand, I think a challenge we all face is operational efficiency. We all have to manage costs. So there's a bit of a challenge between the two, because what we see and what we hear and what research has shown is that customer interactions are actually increasing. So where people used to just call a contact center or go into a shop or a branch, now they're sending web chat messages. They might use some self-service tools. They might go on communities. They will use social media to connect with organizations, and that all has to be managed. And the way that organizations expect to manage that, 60% of the executives think, you know what, we just hire more people to deal with that problem. Well, that doesn't solve that kind of operational efficiency side that we all have to drive. So how do we find that balance? And we feel that the only way to really truly manage that very well, to get that exceptional customer experience, whilst at the same time driving your operational efficiencies, is you need a hybrid workforce. And with a hybrid workforce, we mean man and machine, people and technology working hand in hand. And that way you can manage all those extra interactions without necessarily adding a lot of people to the mix, because we all know, the percentage of the cost of your operation, a big percentage is people, and particularly when you start looking at customer interactions, contact centers, stores, that cost of your staff, of course, is very high. So if you can manage those enhanced number of interactions with more technology, that will really help that. And Gartner actually says at the moment around 50% of all the customer interactions is with people through agent interactions, and they expect that to drop to 15% only in the next few years. And they expect that customers will use a lot more self-service or assisted self-service and a lot more kind of online tools and technologies to help themselves. So we think that that's the way that customer engagement will develop, and that's why we wanted to look at this research, because we have been asking consumers for quite a few years now how they feel about engaging with organizations, how they want to interact with organizations. And now we've also said, well, it's not just the consumers who face that, because within organizations we also have to get technologies to help the people. It's not just about managing those interactions through chatbots. It's about making sure that your people are more efficient by giving them the right tools, and they get much more technology in the workplace. And how do they feel about that? And are they worried that maybe those robots are going to take over their job? And that's what we wanted to explore in this research. So we went to 34,000 consumers with the help of Opinium, a large international research firm. And in 18 countries, we surveyed those people about their attitudes towards technology at home, and at work. And of course, Germany was one of those countries. We also involved Paul Redmond. Paul Redmond is linked to Liverpool University. He has a lot of experience dealing with multiple generations in the workforce. He looks at how millennials and the younger generations are coming into the workforce, how that changes things, and we wanted to get his kind of qualitative input there as well, and get some useful insights in why are things changing this way, and why are people feeling certain ways, because we see quite some generational differences. So today I'm going to talk you through some of the generational differences, but I've also, to make up for my lack of German language, tried to pull out some German statistics to give you some more data around how German people feel about this. So we're going to look at 3 research themes. First of all, we're going to look at the customer expectations and what do they expect from all of you. Then we're going to look at what your employees feel and what does the hybrid workforce do, how do people feel about all this technology. And then we're going to look at, okay, so if people and we know how they feel about technology, there's a lot more technology in the workplace, what's left for people to do. So we're going to have a look at that. And then I've got some key takeaways for you. So let's go straight into those customer expectations. So the biggest trend we've seen is that convenience is a real big factor when choosing a service provider. So when people across the world are looking for an insurance company or a bank or an online retailer or an energy company, for them convenience is a real major driver. They want you to be easy to do business with, and I think we all recognize that. It has to be easy. And actually, when you make it really easy for them to do business with you, they are much more likely to recommend you. They're loyal customers. It's a really big driver of that. But they're pretty demanding because 60% expect to be able to engage with an organization on any channel at any time. So that's a pretty bold statement. Any channel, any time. So disregarding whether it's 2 o'clock in the morning or a Sunday afternoon, and you have to be either on the phone or on web chats or in store. That's a pretty demanding customer base. So let's look a little bit more at this. So we asked, is convenience and easy to engage more important than price? Well, here you can see how people feel about that. What's really interesting here, and you can see Germany quite far out to the right amongst all the European countries. And then on the left-hand side, you see countries where you would expect maybe a higher price sensitivity. So I went back to the research company because I thought, is this data right? Did we not ask the question the wrong way around? Because surely, the UK customer is less price sensitive than a South African or Indian customer. They just have less money. But the data was absolutely right. So then I talked to some of our customers in South Africa to try and figure out, why is this? And then I learned that convenience and ease to engage is really hard to find. So even in India and in South Africa, everyone is time poor. And everyone has to do 50 things at the same time. So they also don't want to take 3 days to get a new driver's license. They would like to get that done within the hour, maybe even quicker. Well, that's pretty tough over there. So they're quite happy to pay a little bit extra if it means that they save all this time where they have to literally stand in a queue to get a driver's license renewed. So I think what you can read from this is not that in Germany or in Northern Europe we are more price sensitive. No, the standard here is much higher already. So people take it as a given. It's normal that things are convenient and easy. And if we don't deliver that, then we pay the price for that because our customers will go elsewhere. In the countries more on the left, they have a longer way to go to delivering that. So then we asked, what drives your purchasing decisions? So we asked people, how important is, the quality of the product, the cost of the product, convenience. And what you can see here is that quite a lot of different factors drive people's purchasing decisions. So yes, of course, your product and your price has to be right. No doubt about it. And I don't think there's a lot of differences between 2018 and 2019 there, as it is everywhere else. But what really obviously also matters is convenience and their customer experience. If people have a bad customer experience, you can have a fantastic price or you can have a great product, but they might not buy it. They might go elsewhere. Trust is something that we've seen quite a lot come up. So trust is around how they deal with consumer data. So how well do you protect your customer data? How do you use it? Don't abuse it. Don't spam your customers. Don't use the data in ways that they haven't allowed you to do, or in other ways than it was intended for. And the company's ethics also very important, and I think we see that coming up a lot in the younger generations. They really, really are, even though they're price-sensitive generation, they don't have as much money as the older generation. They really care about how companies behave. Do they pollute the environment? Do they treat their workers well? Do they do animal testing? Do they pay people fairly? All those things are driving people's buying behavior. And even the brand perception, as you would expect, the younger generation is much more driven by this than the older generation, but it's still a pretty important part of people's buying decisions. So what you can see here is that you have to do everything right. Just having a right product at the right price, people can copy that. Anyone can come out with a faster, bigger, better product, and they can do it probably at a lower cost if they try. But to copy a really good customer experience and to build up a reputation as a company that's trustworthy and that does the right thing is much harder. So we have to do everything right. And when you look actually at the big differences, and I picked out ethics here because here you see some really big differences. Surprisingly, in Northern Europe and Germany, it's a bit lower on the scale. Is it because we have already a higher expectation again that companies behave themselves? We have a lot of legislation, of course, so that might have something to do with it. But also the brand perception is very different by country. People in India and the Emirates and Hong Kong are much more sensitive to brands than people are in Northern Europe. And surprisingly, I live in the UK, even though I'm Dutch, and I feel people are quite brand sensitive, but they are at the end there of the spectrum. But even in Germany as well, it's not the major decision at all. And I think it's quite nice to look at those differences and keep an eye on that. In the other areas, there weren't as many differences. So in terms of price and product, it was all pretty high up, and the same actually for customer experience. But despite us all working really hard on doing all this, and I know so many organizations that are working incredibly hard, of course, on their customer experience, their ease of doing business with, but also on doing the right things. And we see ads appearing from companies trying to do the right thing. Nike has a fantastic ad about female empowerment at the moment, and they're trying to not just do the right thing themselves, but also maybe educate people a bit. Despite all that, what we see is that loyalty continues to decline. So the way we define loyalty is that we ask people in this survey, how long have you been with your service provider? And that goes from banks to insurance companies to energy providers to online shopping, all sectors. And if they say, I've been with my provider for more than 3 years, then we say, okay, that's a loyal customer. That was our benchmark. So 4 years ago, 61% said that they've been with their provider for more than 3 years. Now that's down to 44%. And I have bad news for all of you. It's going to continue to decline, because there's no surprise, I think, that the younger generations are less loyal than the older generations. So we all know what's going to happen. When you then look at verticals, so think of the sector you're in, but I'll pick a few. Look at banking. Um, 4 years ago, that was at 80% of their customers had been there more than 3 years. Now it's only 62%. That's an enormous drop. Insurance companies have notoriously struggled to retain customers. People shop around for better deals all the time, and the industries. And I think this might be the rate that things are going to is online retail and travel, where you see it was never very high to begin with. You might not see the big drop off in online retail, and there's obviously a few giants that really dominate in that field, but that will no doubt change as well. So you can see how low this could go. So I think this is the age of disloyalty, actually, and we can't expect customers just to stay with us just because they have for the past few years. So that was a quick kind of preview, a quick view into how consumers are behaving at the moment. Why are they your customer, and why are they staying your customer or not? Let's now take this jump to the hybrid workforce and look at this always-on era and see how people feel about technology at work. So we've seen lots of studies in the media, and I'm sure it's the same in Germany, where there is some scaremongering. Robots are going to take over our jobs. 47% of all jobs were at risk, was claimed by Oxford University only 6 years ago. That's been adjusted down quite a bit by the OECD. But now you're seeing kind of on average, kind of 10% more or less of the jobs that might be affected, according to those who researched it. So you'd expect maybe people to be a little bit worried about this and think, oh, is my job at risk? And certainly the newspaper headlines don't help there. However, what we've seen in the research is that actually 78% of consumers would welcome technology that would give them the right information at the right time. And 71% says, please get some technology to replace the manual and laborious tasks I'm doing every day, even if it means that, there's less work. Because actually, almost 70% of the people feel that technology will enhance but not replace their jobs. And people are asking employers for better technology. And I'm not surprised about this, because at work, or at home, kids now, there's people in the workplace that have been born pretty much with a phone in their hand, and they've grown up swiping and clicking, and then they come to work and they have to work with these screens, with these systems with black and white or blue and white text. They fall over, they have to remember keyboards, they have to toggle between 14 different applications, they have to learn all these processes. It's not easy. So I'm not surprised that people are coming to work and say, can't you make this easier for us? And that's exactly what they're doing. So look at this younger generation for whom technology always has been so easy. You see little toddlers walking up to television now and swiping because that's what they learn on their iPads and other tablet computers. So you can see the big age differences here and the big attitude differences between the different age groups. So the older generation is asking less for new technologies. Maybe they're just more accepting of the status quo. And they also maybe want less technology, or they want it not as badly as the younger generation. So you have, 4 or 5 generations in the workforce at the moment, and they all have very different attitudes towards technology. And how do you make that work? Because they all work for the same company, and they all have to work together, and they often work in the same teams, and they have very different attitudes towards technology. There are a few things that Paul Redmond suggested here and that he's seen work very well, like, for instance, reverse coaching, get the younger generation to coach the older generation, or even talk to the management team about what technology could do and where it could help. Because we're all, and I'm definitely Generation X, we are all slaves to our emails. First thing you do when you get to the office is turn on your laptop or computer and get stuck in those emails, what's happened overnight. Younger generation, I'm just looking at my own daughters, 19 and 21, they don't read their emails, they don't do email, they miss really important stuff because they don't check their emails. It's just not the technology they're using. But they're very good at working in teams, and they're using much more kind of instant applications, and there's other ways that they communicate. So, do we want to force that generation into our way of working, which is probably not the most efficient way of working anyway, or do we want to see how we can change that and how we can make it work for everyone? The next thing we looked at is, how happy are you at work? And this is quite good news actually, because almost 4 out of 5 people say that they're happy at their current place at work, and more than 70% says I find my job really fulfilling. So that's really encouraging, because this is of course from all job levels all over the world. What's interesting though is only 21% says that they have a low level of stress. So we're all very happy and we're all pretty fulfilled, but we're all walking around with a lot of stress, and stress is the new normal. That's just the way we are. You ask someone how they are and they will say, oh, busy. And people are juggling so many things at the same time. We're all time poor, and there is definitely also, I think, many people a fear of missing out, and so we're committing to too many things, and work is really busy. So life in general is just stressful, but we seem to be quite happy with that. Especially what you can see here at work, they don't seem to mind it as much. Then we did some cross-correlation of the data, and what we looked at is we said if people, feel the technology they need, if they feel that they have the technology they need to work more effectively, they actually were happier, they were more fulfilled, and they were less stressed. And the same with if they were willing and they're open for new technologies and for new ways of working, again, they were happier, fulfilled, and not stressed. So technology is not actually creating the stress and the problems, it's really helping them. And I've seen this in a few studies since we've done this as well. McKinsey had a fantastic study that showed that managers are really worried about implementing new technologies because they're worried about how the employees would react to it. And in fact, employees were really happy with it, and they really welcome it, and they like change and they like progress. And like I said, technology at home is easy. Why is it not as easy at work? So that gave you a little sneak preview. I'm going through this quite fast because we haven't got that much time. But let's have a look. And if people welcome all this technology and we have all these systems that can help us, where does that leave the human? Technology will make better doctors. Computers are better at diagnosing what's wrong with someone and what disease they might have. However, when you have that discussion with your doctor about whatever disease you have, and you're talking about a treatment plan, you probably really want to talk to a person. And there's so many other examples of that where people can be more, can add a lot to the conversation. They can be emotive, they can add empathy, they can read people. There's a lot of areas where, of course, you always need that human. So that's why we feel people and technology need to work hand in hand. So let's have a look at kind of the customer engagement side. If you look at contact preferences, people said, you know what, we're quite happy in general to engage with organizations through my account online and self-service. A third of people say that's by far, for me, the easiest way to do it. There's still a lot of people who want that personal contact. You can see that on the left. There's 59% of the people still say, I want to talk to someone over the phone, or I want to talk to someone in person. But it's dropping, and what's coming up, what's rising very quickly is mobile apps. So people's phones are getting bigger. It's easier to just have apps. You can log in with face recognition or other biometrics. Super, super easy. When we get a bit more specific, though, when we say what do you want to do when you want to change your account details, the online self-service by far outweighs that personal contact. Simple tasks, people are quite happy to do themselves. They don't need a human with empathy or a person who's going to say they're sorry or they're going to help them. They just want to quickly do it and get on with their lives. And they can do that 24/7, so it makes it very, very easy. Again, some big differences globally, and you can see Germany here, sixth from the right. Surprisingly, my home country, the Netherlands, only Germany's neighbor is on the far left. I think it's just a country that has a fantastic infrastructure, and it makes it very easy to do things online. One of my colleagues in Germany said, "Oh, but our particularly mobile infrastructure is quite flaky at times, so maybe that's the reason why. Have a think about it, see if you recognize yourself in this, but you can definitely see some differences. But don't take this as a given, because in a year's time, in a 2 years' time, people will feel differently about this again." However, now let's think about when you want to complain. I certainly know that when I want to complain, I want to talk to someone. And that's what most people actually want to do. So almost 50% says, I just want to talk to someone when I have a complaint. And then they can apologize, they can say they're going to make it better. Still a few people who are saying, quite happy to do it myself, or maybe send an email. So I can write a nice letter, put all the details in, send it off, and wait for them to reply. So there's still differences there, in how very big differences compared to when people just want to do the simple things. When it becomes urgent, it becomes even much more about that personal contact. When you have a leaking pipe in your house, or you have your car broken down and you're standing by the side of the motorway, you really want to talk to someone. You don't want to rely on a web chat or on your online self-service. You want to speak to someone, you want to know that they're going to solve it for you right there, and right then and there. So there's very different areas where the person is needed versus where technology can help. So bear that in mind, because people are very good at engaging with people, and that's, I think, something we never have to forget. We should always remember that. But there's a lot of things where technology just can make life so much easier, so much simpler, and offer that convenience to your customers. Very quickly, we've acquired a company called 4C, and they're looking very much at the digital customer journey. And what this slide here shows you is what people do when they go start a transaction or an engagement up to the end of a transaction, either in banking or in retail. And what you can see is also, if someone calls you, it doesn't mean that they're going to complete their transaction over the phone. Or if they start on the website in an online store, it doesn't mean that they necessarily are going to finish and buy everything that they put in their basket. People switch between channels, and mobile, again, is seen as shown as rising in popularity. A lot more people are starting and ending their journey from start to finish, from inquiry or first kind of looking for information to actually pressing that purchase button. They're doing that on their mobiles. What's really interesting from their research, so this is from the 4C research, is they asked them, why do you use the retail contact center? And the primary reason was, I like speaking to a person. Well, fair enough. We see that in our research too. However, all the others, so 56% of them, called because their digital channels failed. They could not complete what they wanted to do on digital channels, whether it was mobile, laptop, or mobile devices or apps. So a big lesson here, if you want to drive down the number of calls into your contact center, make sure that your digital channels work really well. Otherwise, the call volumes are just going to increase, and you're going to need people for that. Quickly, a few takeaways. 6 takeaways I've got for you. So that omni-channel experience, we just talked about it. Make sure it's seamless. It really helps you with managing all those interactions. If you are looking at digitalizing some of your processes, check with your customers, check with your staff. Do they need it? Will it help them? If not, maybe you need to look elsewhere. And also review the processes before you digitalize them, because if you don't do that, you have a bad process. You digitalize it, you have a bad digital process. very simple. Learn from the best. Don't just look at your own industry. Just because you work in the insurance industry and that's how it's always done in the insurance industry and your competitors do it all the same way, doesn't mean that that's the way that's it. Because your customers are shopping at Amazon, they are watching Netflix, they're paying with PayPal, they're having all these fantastic digital experiences, and they will expect it from you too. Just because you're a bank or you provide electricity doesn't mean that they don't expect that same kind of experience. This is what your customers now expect across the board. I've got some fantastic examples that I could share with you, but I am running out of time. So I'm going to go to the next point, and that is, if you are looking at involving or implementing new technology in the workplace, involve your staff. They really like it. It will stop kind of the resistance to it. They like being engaged. They welcome the technologies. The data clearly show that. And what it will do is it will free up. Having better technology will free up your teams. So your teams can do those kind of human engagements at the moments it really, really matters. Those moments of truth when your agents can really shine. That's what you need to give them time to do. So use the technology, get the technology that takes away time-consuming processes, that provides them with the information they need at their fingertips, so they don't have to look up and put your customers on hold. All that silent time is such a waste of time and money, and it so badly affects the customer experience. Make sure that they have the information and that they're not stuck doing all these routine tasks that could easily be done by technology. And lastly, mind the generation gap. It's really important that you get all your teams from across all generations to work together. Don't just assume because they're all your employees that they're comfortable with technology in the same level and they can work with the same systems easily. Look at the reverse coaching, see how you can get intergenerational teams working together, and that will really help with the technology acceptance, and age and preferences are really important there. So very briefly, there's a research paper, 28-page document that gives you a lot of data around this research, and it's available on this website, so verint.com/GB/research. We'll soon have it available in German too. We're in the middle of translating it. It's all brand new. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. If you're interested in this kind of content, please connect with me or follow me on Twitter. This is the kind of topics I tend to write about and tweet about. And if you have any questions, do feel free to email me on the address here as well. And that was a very quick overview of this year's Verint Global Research. And I think tomorrow, actually, my colleague Alex will be talking about our intelligent virtual assistants, which is a really great way to help that customer experience while protecting your bottom line. Thank you very much for your time and attention.